This podcast is brought to you by Cintas, helping keep your automotive business looking great from showroom to service bay, with essentials like durable workwear, absorbent shop towels, and high-performance floor mats. Get ready for the workday at cintas.com/automotive.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Friday, April 3rd, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in New York City. Today on the show, Stellantis is in talks to produce Chinese EVs at its idled Canadian plant. Automakers are bracing for more volatility after a weak first quarter, and Lindsay Automotive Group settles allegations of deceptive pricing for $3.1 million. Plus, senior retail editor Dan Shine sits down with Sarah Milovich from Carlton to talk about the compliance risk of artificial intelligence for auto lenders.
So there is this balance of ensuring that you're creating operational efficiencies, you're using AI to the best of your ability, but also with this compliance and legal check that needs to be embedded in it.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Stellantis is discussing options for building EVs with its Chinese partner Leapmotor at its idled Canada plant. The companies are in early stage talks, according to people familiar with the matter. If they decide to move forward, this would mark the first major Chinese auto investment in Canada since the nation reached an agreement with China to reduce tariffs on these vehicles. Unifor, Canada's largest private sector union, says the prospects of Stellantis using the facility as a bare-bones assembly plant for Chinese EVs doesn't meet the automaker's commitments to workers. Automakers are bracing for continued volatility after a weak first quarter. Many automakers saw U.S. sales decrease for the start of the year, and the factors that drove that decline, including vehicle affordability, rising gas prices, lackluster job growth, and decreasing consumer confidence, continue to weigh on the market. And on top of that, the loss of the federal tax credit continues to drag on EV volume. And the industry doesn't have tariff tailwinds pushing consumers into dealerships. Consumers face pressure across the car ownership experience, limiting showroom traffic, experts say. The state of the market is signaling the potential for a repeat of 2025's uncertainty. And Lindsay Automotive Group agreed to pay a $3.1 million penalty to settle allegations of deceptive pricing tactics. But the group could have to pay more than $75 million in restitution to customers. The Federal Trade Commission and the Maryland Attorney General's Office originally filed the lawsuit in late 2024. The allegations include the use of unadvertised charges on vehicles and deception about add-ons. In the settlement, Lindsay Automotive did not admit or deny any wrongdoing. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Mercedes-Benz plans to invest $4 billion into its Alabama plant through 2030. The bulk of that investment will go into localizing the production of the GLC crossover, one of the brand's most popular models. I'm here now with our own Urvash Kakaria to talk about what the investment means for Mercedes. Urvash, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Hi, Kel. Thanks for having me back. Hope you're doing well.
I am. Hope you are too. So, Urvash, why is it so important that Mercedes increase U.S. production of the GLC crossover?
So the GLC is a mid-size crossover, and it is the number two seller. Mercedes' number two seller in the United States. It's also the automaker's number one seller globally. And the factory in the U.S. in Vance, Alabama, in Tuscaloosa County near Birmingham, is a major export hub as well. So the GLC, bringing the GLC production to the U.S. serves two purposes. It creates local production of one of the high volume sellers that Mercedes has in the U.S., but then it also creates a export hub, production hub for its number one seller globally. So, Mercedes gets a twofer by localizing U.S. production here.
So, what role did tariff pressure play in this investment?
So Mercedes has obviously, tries to downplay that as the reason, but the reality is that geopolitics and trade definitely played a role. these decisions to put production in the U.S. Take a while. It's not like it can be done overnight. But Mercedes announced. We actually reported that the GLC was coming to the United States a couple of years ago, and then last year, or rather late 2024, they officially confirmed that the GLC would come to the US. So it hasn't been that much of a lag. Um, we previously reported, based on supply chain sources and our conversations with Mercedes executives, that production would begin in late 27. But earlier this week, when I talked to the CEO, Mercedes-Benz CEO, about the timing for GLC, he said it was more likely now in 2029. So that basically creates enough of a lag for production to sort of ramp up in the U.S., which sort of lends credibility to the theory that tariffs definitely drove this decision. And if the GLC is the number two seller, they are paying a 15% tariff on every GLC that they bring in, that they ship into the United States from Bremen, Germany. So this is a big tariff bill that they're paying. So localizing it makes all the sense in the world. However, I don't think tariffs are the only reason. I think all automakers want to build where they sell, and by building one of your high volume vehicles here, they can lower the cost in terms of shipping. They can avoid disruptions, again, due to wars or supply chain issues, and then they also help bring capacity, bring utilization to their existing factory here in the U.S. So in the U.S. they build the GLS and the GLE along with their electric variants, and obviously with demand for EVs going down. They're building far fewer of those electric vehicles, which has created more capacity that needs to be utilized. And by bringing the GLC here, they help, make the plant operate at as much utilization as they can, which then makes the plant more efficient.
Perfect. Urvash, always insightful. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Coming up, we'll talk about if lenders can rely on generative AI to be compliant with the Truth in Lending Act. That's next on Daily Drive.
Are you a dealer creating a workplace culture your employees are proud to be part of? Applications are now open for the 2026 Automotive News Best Dealerships to Work For program. This isn't just an award, it's a chance to get real insight into what's working at your dealership and where you can improve. And we've expanded the categories this year, recognizing everything from technician experience and leadership development to AI enablement and employee retention. The registration deadline is April 17th. Find out more and apply at autonews.com.
Your day-to-day is hectic. Don't waste time juggling vendors. Cintas helps keep your auto shop looking great from showroom to service bay. Get durable workwear from your team's favorite brands, absorbent shop towels to tackle oil and grease, and high-performance floor mats to help keep your lobby clean. All picked up, washed, and returned back to you with no upfront cost required. Get a single source partner to keep you firing on all cylinders. Visit cintas.com/automotive to get ready for the workday.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Can lenders rely on generative AI to be compliant with the Truth in Lending Act? Why lenders are at fault when AI-generated compliance calculations fail. As AI adoption accelerates across auto financial services, a critical question is going largely unaddressed. Is generative AI for Truth in Lending Act compliance quietly building systematic risk into lender portfolios? Sarah Milovich, General Counsel and Vice President of Compliance at Carlton, spoke with Senior Editor Dan Shine about how lenders can make sure generative AI doesn't harm its compliance efforts.
Sarah, thanks so much for joining me on the F&I Friday edition of Daily Drive.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
So AI is the big thing. Everyone's talking about AI and how it makes our lives easier. And in many cases, that is true. But you have kind of an interesting perspective in that in auto finance, there are some great things that AI can do, but there's some cautionary tales. There's some troubling things that when it comes to AI and decisioning and auto lending. Talk a little bit about what you think the issues that loom out there for lenders.
Sure. At the outset, my background is in compliance and legal. So obviously I'm coming from a very skeptical viewpoint where I am proceeding with caution. So I recognize the difference between the hats we wear in addressing the AI concept and ensuring that the legal and compliance aspects are met, as well as business efficiencies. So there is this balance of ensuring that you're creating operational efficiencies, you're using AI to the best of your ability, but also with this compliance and legal check that needs to be embedded in it. When we talk about in the dealer context, there are various different ways that dealers may be looking to use AI. But the word of caution that I would say is the role of a human still being in the loop in the process, the role of ensuring that there is accurate checks in place to make sure that any use of AI still has that quality check that's being part of the process. I think that is a critical element that needs to be considered, still be maintained throughout any process that you're trying to build in efficiencies with the use of AI.
There's something called the prompting paradox. Can you kind of explain that?
Yes, the prompting paradox is the idea of always ensuring that your prompt is both well thought out, that your prompt includes the necessary information, that your prompt includes the necessary amount of details for whatever context you're using it. And from a compliance and legal perspective, I offer the caution that the output that you're going to get is only as good as the prompt that you use. So, in a very simple context, if you ask for, I work in the world of calculations. So at Carlton, we're really focused on a calculation engine that does payment calculations, tax, title, and fee, but also APR calculations. So in the context of APR, which is the world I live in, the TILA APR, if you use an AI tool to calculate a TILA APR and you just simply ask, produce a TILA APR through an Excel file or in whatever mechanism. Well, AI does not know what context you're talking in. So it could start pulling in mortgage concepts about particular charges and fees that maybe the naming conventions are similar, but the context is so different and can create differences in how the amortization schedules are run and how the process is done that you don't even know is an issue that is behind the scenes in the underlying assumptions. That's really the paradox we have with prompting is the prompts are only as good as the level of detail that you provide in creating them.
Right, AI can't fix an incomplete prompt, or doesn't know what state you might be in, or doing a loan for, the state specific,
exactly,
regulatory stuff.
And the prompt that you can give, say you're trying to do an amortization schedule, and you give a prompt for creating an amortization schedule. Well, if you don't know to say whether or not compounding is involved, it can produce a very legitimate amortization schedule that includes compounding, which violates state law. So, although in a different context, that is a perfectly legitimate amortization schedule, recognizing the differences and the different rules is still a critical piece in using AI.
Yep. And I would imagine things can be compounded if you're a multi-state lender.
Absolutely.
How so? Tell us how.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. Not all fees are the same. That's just one simple takeaway. So if you're looking in one state and the treatment of a particular fee, and then you're looking in another state and perhaps the taxation of a particular fee can be different on a state by state basis. So trying to create rules that are overarching and that would apply to all states is just ripe for error because states are so nuanced and complex in how they deal with various fees, treatment of interest calculations, various components like that.
And I know when we talk a little bit about, at the highest level, the FTC and things like that, and how I think dealerships maybe maybe the FTC is not going to be as enforced as much as maybe in the past under this current administration. But we always kind of say, well, at the state level, you have to be careful too. And I would imagine at the state level for this as well, that there is going to be, probably increased scrutiny to make sure that AI is not doing something that is wrong or illegal.
No, you make a great point. The idea that you can ever blame AI for errors, that's not going to fly with state regulators. So especially as state regulators are handling more enforcements, are trying to be a little more active, that's what we're hearing and seeing. But as states become more active in their enforcement actions, the idea of saying, well, we just use this AI tool to create this process, that's never going to fly. You have to be able to answer to your calculations, answer to your processes, answer to the reasoning behind those processes.
You can't blame AI for, if the state's attorney general comes knocking on the door, you can't say, it wasn't us, it was a tool.
You can try, but good luck with that.
That's legally speaking. That's your legal opinion.
Yeah,
that's not really going to fly.
My official legal advice there.
Got it. And summing up this, what advice do you have for dealerships, for lenders, for the F&I manager out there who wants to use AI and hope can help him or her? What kind of advice would you have for them?
I think doing a full risk analysis. AI can be very beneficial and very helpful for various processes. So when it comes to some different potential processes of advertising scripts or finding markets to target or doing different tools for maybe validation of fees as an external check. But any area that is high risk from a compliance perspective, proceed with great caution. So there are low risk items that the use of AI is great for creating some of those efficiencies. But recognizing that there are certain triggers or flags that do rise to the level that you want to have an extra layer of scrutiny built in order to ensure that you're not opening yourself up to risk unintentionally.
Great advice, Sarah. Great conversation. Very interesting stuff. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Dan.
That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Riley Hodder, Urvash Kakaria, Vince Bond Jr., Larry Velaquette, and John Hutter for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on dealership lawsuits, industry turmoil, partnerships with China, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back over the weekend for our Weekend Drive edition of the show. I'll sit down with our own Larry Velaquette and Jack Walsworth to talk about first quarter results and all that happened at the New York International Auto Show.
The consumers that are coming in to buy new vehicles are more what he called have-to customers.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.